Ordinary women. Expand your knowledge base and make the right connections.
What NAPFIM is doing and the work that they are creating and honoring women everywhere can't be matched by anything.
Celebrating 20 years of breakthrough networking. NAPFIM.
I think it is extraordinary, first and foremost, but it's absolutely necessary.
NAPFIM is the National Association of Black Female Executives in Music and Entertainment, with 20 networks located across the United States, Canada, and Africa.
It's a place for us to have a voice. It's a place for us to share our voices.
Join NAPFIM and do it today. It's easy.
One of the things that is blessing my life now, 16 years later, is that the genuine relationships that I built in 2002, now those sisters are executives. And it was a NAPFIM sister who hired me.
Join us online at www.napfim.org.
I'm telling you, man, I'd brush up on my engineering skills here. Well, good morning and welcome to Axion 2020, All Eyes on Us, presented by Splint and NAPFIM Africa. We've had some really engaging, incredible sessions from artist representation to learning about management, learning about business structure. It has been an amazing 2 days. We're into our final session, which is about media. It is about radio, and we've got two very powerful, I would say, radio executives. And I'm looking at my screen here. I reached out to Gina Miller last night because I said, if you could just jump on for 5 minutes, because as a music executive or record executive or a person that deals with artists and all the dynamics of music, I just know that she could throw in a comment that definitely would get Kashawn over there. Get Kashawn over there talking. So that's why I asked Gina to just jump on for a minute because I know she has to go. But we are NAPFIM, the National Association of Black Female Executives in Music and Entertainment. We're a nonprofit networking empowerment resource base for women in the business of music and entertainment. Our organization, just so everybody knows, does not ostracize men. We love our brothers. We call them men that support our organization and that are a part of our organization. We call them the rocks because they are that rock solid, hard body that we can lean on. So brothers, definitely, with much love, we need you. And we've had some incredible brothers that have joined us the past 2 days and shared some incredible information. Also, I would invite everyone, go to our website. We're napfim.org. Also, our Facebook. We're on all of social media. I'm NAPFIM Prez, so follow me. But follow, most importantly, Chi-Chi, who is our eyes, our ears, our everything there in Lagos. And follow NAPFIM Africa. I do believe just following these 2 days, based on what the panelists have been saying, as I just got a text, what's next? What are we doing next? So I called Chi-Chi and I said, what are we doing next? So there are a lot of things we know we need to do. It's all about the collaboration. It's all about the empowerment. It's all about, for our brothers and sisters there in Africa, and you see what's going on here in this country with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, as Burna Boy said when he accepted his Best International Artist Award on the BET Awards. He says, in order for Black lives to matter, Africa has to matter. And we want to be the catalyst that makes Africa matters, especially as it relates to music and entertainment. So this is just the first of many. Be prepared to see more. Your moderator, who is our network director, Chi Chi, take it away. You'll have to unmute your microphone there.
Yeah, I'm unmuted, but am I lagging? Because I'm seeing
No, I hear you.
network issues. I'm in
Yeah.
Nigeria, Deji. I'm having network issues. Everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us on Facebook Live. If you're watching us now, if you tune in later, welcome. Like Johnny said, the last few sessions have been incredible. Gina, thank you so much for joining us. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
You can, great.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Sorry?
We can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So, in this panel, one thing that has kind of come up at every point during our last panels is the fact that artists can take back their power and use social media and the different platforms to push their music, which kind of leaves us with the question, well, what about radio, right? So has technology changed the relevance of traditional media in the role of music and in the role of disseminating music and creating superstars and giving them that additional validity? Also, there were questions just around, well, I'm an artist. I'm sure between Kashan and Deji, you guys get inundated with people trying to get their music on the air, and how do they go about that? So it's really, targeting artists and letting people understand the relevance of radio and its role as it's evolved in today's music ecosystem. So before we kind of get into that panel, we already had Gina yesterday, who is the general manager for Entertainment One out of Nashville. Contributions in yesterday's panel were incredible. So she'll join us for a little bit, but then we have Deji, who I'll start by introducing him, and then I'll tell you guys a bit about Kashan as well. So Deji is a seasoned media professional with experience spanning over 12 years in radio and broadcast management in Nigeria, having obtained his master's degree from the prestigious Cranefield School of Management. He started out as his professional career in Sony Europe as a market analyst responsible for the UK market. He's worked for numerous blue chip companies and then moved back to Nigeria in 2007 to join Megalectrics Limited as general manager for their Pioneer brand. So he oversees the Beta FM and Classic FM and has been integral to the growth of the brand, adding Niger FM and Lagos Talks. Those stations are across London, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, and Ibadan. So he currently oversees 12 radio stations, manages a team of over 250 employees. Deji, welcome. We're super excited to have you.
Thank you very much, Chichi.
Yes. And then we have Kashan, who's been in radio forever. I think before we got on live, Kashan, how many years did you say? Did you say 28 years?
Yeah, this year marks 28.
Wow. That's almost as old as I am because I'm just 26. So you're
Yeah, I started at like 10, so no worries.
So she's been in radio for a very long time. She's now with Radio One as the program director and overseeing their programming across key markets in DC, Baltimore, and Philadelphia. Did I get that? DC, Baltimore, and sorry?
Vice President of Programming.
Vice President of Programming. I'm so sorry. Vice President of Programming. And I should add that she heads their syndicate programs, Ruspar in the morning. Kashan, when I lived in DC, well, my family still lives there. I was Ruspar's #1 fan. You have to let him know that.
I sure will.
So thank you so much. We're so glad to have you
Glad
both
to be
on
here.
board.
Thank you.
So I want to just start off by talking about how has, and Deji, you can start. How has social media disrupted your business, or has it or has it not? Has it had any impact on how radio stations do business today?
So first of all, I want to say thank you very much for having me here, and thanks to Johnny Walker as well. The way I see it, I wouldn't say social media has disrupt. I guess it's a positive disruption, if you were to ask me, because what it has done is that it's created an instant feedback mechanism between kind of like the radio station and the audience, so whereas before they'll have to call into the radio station, and you might be unlucky, or you might be lucky to get your phone call picked up, but now with social media, you can get an instant reaction, an interaction from the audience. So one of the presenters could put out there, oh, let's use a topical issue at the moment, or what do you think about open marriages with Jada Pinkett and Will Smith? And instantly, like, you get tons of comments coming back telling you about what they feel. And it kind of helps you user generated content for the presenters to be able to kind of talk about that and go off a different tangent. So I think it's a good complementary platform for radio. Obviously, it means that, with the video element, it means that, the presenters now have to kind of look a certain way when they come on. But for me, I think it's a good complementary platform for radio. I wouldn't say it's kind of killed radio, or it kind of goes hand in hand as far as I'm concerned.
But can you say with regards to music and
Sorry, say that again. You're lagging. Say that again.
hello?
I can hear you now. What did you say?
Can you hear me?
Now
I
we
can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. Now I was saying, can you speak to radio in relation to music distribution?
What,
Because
using what?
at some point,
Go on.
yeah, at some point, if an artist wanted to get their music out, right, they depended solely on radio. But now I can get my music out. I can reach audiences, whether I'm using YouTube or my Instagram or Spotify. There's so many options. So with regards to artists and music, what role do you feel that radio still plays today in its relevance?
I think that, we're going to get there eventually. And, in our part of the world, in Africa, data is still an expensive commodity for people. And radio still being readily available and easily accessible is still the primary platform to break music, particularly for a certain segment of the economy, of the public. Those who can't really afford a fancy smartphone or a feature phone, or even afford the data costs that have to do with paying for the Spotify subscriptions, all that, all the iTunes. So for me, radio is still the primary platform for breaking new music, and to kind of, it still kind of creates music superstars, in our part of the world. I'm sure that at let's give it 5-10 years, when data costs start to come down, it might not be the primary platform, but for now, I think that it's still the primary platform to kind of break new music, introduce new artists, and kind of, you know how it is. You play the song and create superstars essentially.
Kashan, you guys are obviously ahead of us in terms of, data is not a challenge, right? So have you seen any changes in terms of, how the relevance of radio in this time, in this era?
Well, radio, as Deji was saying, radio is still here in the States, is still a primary platform for discovering new artists. And the new artists still come to radio to get exposed. I think that, when you talk about the first question you had about social media, I think it's enhanced some of the, platforms for radio. And I think also I think it's just evolved. when I first started in the early 90s, mid 90s, it was okay, are you out getting your record played in the clubs? But now it's are you getting exposed on social media? What's your digital footprint? So I think it's all relevant to the time that you're in. So I think that the artists are still looking at radio as a big enforcer for them as far as getting filling the concert venues. Digital can't do that.
Yeah.
Only radio and the radio personalities can do that. And coming in and getting those interviews with these local personalities, these big personalities. As far as Urban One, we have Ricky Smiley, we have D.L. Hughley, we have Russ Parr, as you mentioned earlier, we have Donnie Simpson, who, we all know is a legend from Video Soul days. So social media can't really do that. It's still, radio is really the home of that.
So obviously we've established that radio is a big deal. So Gina, you have artists and your objective is, listen, you know what? We've had the panels. Yes, you can have your music on your YouTube and your social media page, but you need to get onto the radio station. What's your strategy for your artists when you're engaging radio stations to make sure they get the play and get in rotation?
Well, so I'm gonna start like everyone else and just say thank you again for this opportunity to be here with you all today. I think that first and foremost, while the digital space has its presence for sure, but radio still is a huge driver for the Black community and the Black audience. So there's no one's about to abandon radio right now. Radio for sure is a huge part of our business model. It's a huge part of what we try to do. And I think, to the comment that Deji made earlier, is that they work parallel, like the digital space. I mean, we need all the spaces right now. It's really the whole bottom line. Like, you really need every place that you can consider to have the saturation for your music is what you should be doing. And we're no different from any other, entity or artist who is perhaps an independent and not have a team or a label. And so for us, the strategy really comes down, first and foremost, it hasn't been said, I don't think I heard, but it starts with great music. Like, it ultimately has to be great music that we're talking about. Great production. It has to be relatable. I believe in songs that are singable. I have probably a form. I can't tell you all my secrets though, Chichi. No. But I do think that there are some things that have to be considered when you're talking about airplay. And one of the things that I find, especially dealing with the artists in the way that we do, over time, what we've learned is that there's a real science to this. So a lot of artists, and community people have a frustration about what radio should be to them, when really we have to dial back and understand that the science of radio is probably not what most people are thinking when they're in their cars and in their homes. There's a real thing that's going on, starting with advertisers. So we also have to speak to that the money-making process for radio, sometimes it would appear that their agenda is not aligned with the agenda of the record company. And that happens all the time. But where the differences are made up is in relationship. I think then we can get on the same page about what we're trying to achieve, because it takes people, which is why artists have labels, because you have relationships that they don't have. You have resources that they don't have. You have, the ability to create opportunities that they just can't do on their own. At least it shouldn't be to some degree that way. Now, there are a lot of artists who've been able to make a lot of strides without having all that, but it takes work. It takes time. It takes understanding what the needs of the radio station are. And then you try to figure out how then do you get your agenda incorporated into that. And so I think that we have to also give that too. I've been in the car with my own children, especially now during quarantine. My son's like, "We just heard that song," and I'm like, "So what?" Like, that's what we want. I mean, you want, because you can't get saturation. I hear it all the time. The radio station's playing the same songs all the time. We need the same songs to be heard over and over, because the truth of the matter is, it takes so many times before something stays with you anyway. So if they're playing, one-offs every through the segment, every hour, we would never get the opportunity to be endeared to something as strongly as we all want these songs to be loved, right? So I think that there is, for us, for sure, I am a huge proponent of radio and appreciative for, the relationship that we have with our partners and a lot of what we're able to do.
Cheech, can I just quickly add to what Gina has said? She's made a very good point there. And what I also find with radio and music artists is that there's a less likelihood for you to get drowned out. Like you get, streaming platforms have millions of songs on there, and as you have a single, it can easily get drowned out unless you've got a relationship with them to put you on their shop front window. But with radio, like you said, there's the recall there. It kind of, you know how it is. You play the song over and over again until it sticks in people's mind. And so, we're catering to a diverse audience. You're in the car with your kids by yourself, and then there's recall because they're like, oh, we've heard the song already. That's what radio is there for. Plus,
Right.
like I said, it's less likely to be drowned out. If you've got a good single, it's not going to be drowned out, in the next 2 weeks by an avalanche of new singles coming out like the streaming platforms do. They're constantly putting new songs on there, and then a song that came out a month ago is suddenly considered an old record. And you're like, it hasn't even gone through the process yet. You know what I mean? So I'm just agreeing with what you said. I just wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I think it forces everyone to be organized because we also, to your point, radio is a slow building process. And again, people get frustrated, artists get frustrated a lot of times because they want to see something, they think they've got a smash, they want to hear it, they want it to get to radio Friday, they want it like buzzing everywhere around the world by Monday, and it just doesn't work that way. It's a process, and it takes time to really build enough of a story and to get multiple cities and markets on board. And I think that that's another thing, everyone has this big idea a lot of times that they want this overarching presence when we really should be starting like at home, like building outwards, starting where you are. So I do have some very clear strategy in how we try to approach, what we're doing. I don't think you ignore home. I don't think you ignore your state, your region. I don't think you ignore everywhere you can drive to. Like, see, I'm old school. We got in the car and just hit it everywhere we need to go. So I'm like, if you can drive to it, then you should own it. Like, it requires work though, and I think that what sometimes with the digital space, there's this faux thing happening with, I've made it, I've hit it because you get so much buzz and you hit that grain and you think, oh, I don't have to do these things. But I do think that it still requires being able to have that touch component from not only what radio does, but it puts you directly in touch with your audience too. So through the opportunities of events and commercials, like there's all different ways to get direct to consumer, and the only real medium that I still see as effective is terrestrial radio.
And I also, if
Thank
I
you,
can
Gina.
jump in, I also think that artists, they live in their own world. We know that. And
Yep.
they forget how competitive this landscape is. And they forget that, radio's not playing 45 new records in an hour, even a day, a week, or 2 weeks, or whatever. So they start thinking, okay, well, why isn't mine happening right away? And I think that what you were saying, Gina, is, what's your story? And if your home is not supporting you, then I'm a little curious why they're not supporting you, So, and the digital space also enhances that, outside of your home, obviously. But yeah, definitely, if you are, from Memphis and you're coming and telling me you're the next big thing. Well, if Memphis doesn't think so, then I'm a little like, all right, well, let me put this to the side because I already have 5 other artists that have been baking for 6 weeks that we've been trying to make room for. But obviously, people don't care about that. They, it's all about me. And I get that.
Yeah.
That's human nature.
People want what they want when they want it,
Right.
right?
When they want it. Yeah.
It's also that microwave generation where they want everything right now,
Right. Absolutely.
Like they don't want to kind of build up slowly and kind of work and work. Yeah, it's amazing how it's shifted from back in the days to now. They want it now. when the 20 likes, 50,000 streams,
Right.
ooh, I've made it. It
Right.
doesn't work that way.
I think too, let me add this component, that I made it part, along with the fact of, have you even really studied the format? Because I think studying and being informed would, if we had more artists that took the time to know, to know themselves first and foremost, who they are as an audience, what's the messaging that you want your audience to know, then you can even create a different expectation for where the music lands, because you understand what's living around it. And I think that that happens too, Kashawn. What you say, like, people, they want their music played, and it's like, this doesn't even fit. You haven't even paid attention to what we're
Right.
doing, because this doesn't even fit what we're doing now. This doesn't fit what we've done the last 6 months. This doesn't
Exactly.
fit. And so another level of frustration just comes because of lack of education, or information that they have not been able to, clearly did not take the time to figure out, what the format's even calling for.
That's
And I don't
absolutely
believe
right.
that artists should write music or create music for radio, or for any space specifically. But I do think you have to be wise and research before you expect someone to give you a shot on something that's far away from where they are.
From what they're doing, yes.
It's what they're
Because at the
doing.
end of the day, it's a business for us. We're still held accountable for our ratings, which obviously equal revenue, So, and that's another thing with partners in on the record side, and even the artists, as the last panel was talking about, just relationships, but just understanding, what your partners are accountable for. We wouldn't come and ask the artist or the record company to do something that would put them in jeopardy of their jobs. And it's like, all right, this isn't remotely what we're, like you were saying, it's not remotely what we're doing. We may have a relationship, but this isn't what we do on this particular station. So unfortunately, we just can't support you. And just making sure that people understand that. And I think it does go back to the relationships. And I think a lot of the new artists need to understand, and again, going back to the last panel, I don't know how many people that are watching viewed the last panel, but just making sure you have the management team and the record company that, has that relationship, that, you can secure that conversation for you. I think that's very important. I think it's so important, especially these days where it's so competitive, the slots are fewer, people's attention span is so much shorter than ever before, because radio, we're competing with apps, we're competing with all kinds of streaming companies. So it's like, yeah, we have to really be, I say to my PDs all the time, you have to be surgical with what you're putting on your radio station, because you only have a snapshot of people's attention to get what you want across.
So, Kashawn, and I mean, with both yourself and Deji, you're managing radio stations across different platforms, and sorry, across different markets that are very, very different. How is your approach to, obviously what people want to listen to in Washington, D.C. is not necessarily what they're listening to in Richmond or, another market. How do you juggle the different needs for the different markets?
Well, I think the first thing is making sure that you have the right person in the program director seat for those particular markets. I think that I can sit in DC and look at stats and have conference calls with the PDs and maybe know the markets remotely. But if you're not in that market, it's hard to make those judgment calls. So that's why you have to be very, very sure that you got the right people in this actual seats in the markets. And for me, I think we have a great team of folks in DC and Baltimore and Philadelphia and Richmond, Virginia, to really get across the company's objectives, the station's objectives, the general manager's objectives for the particular market, and working with them every week. And we see a lot of young program directors, which, is great, coming across in the last couple of years. And, just making sure that we're coaching them and we're grooming them. And not only dealing with artist relations, but also dealing with, personnel, dealing with your talent, how to manage up, dealing with your market manager, your market president, other managers within the company. So there are a lot of moving pieces to that. But I mean, I find it fulfilling, especially when the ratings come out and we start, we're doing well in these markets. But it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge.
Um, I couldn't agree more with Kashan. It's very important to have a good program director, but I also think that doing good audience research also kind of helps, and music research as well. Like for us, we kind of we do a weekly audience research to kind of get feedback. And we do it internally as well as externally. So as well as having a good PD, you also want to kind of have good links to the community as well. Like, and when I talk about that, sometimes, I'm looking for the kids who are the hottest kids in their universities, or the guys who do all the hottest parties, and we want them to be a part of the station because they're the ones that can let us know what's bubbling underground or what's hot or what the new trend is like. So research as well as the people are two key things for me. And like I said, also as well, being in touch with the community and just making sure you're visible and letting the community know that you're there for them as well, because then you'll get a lot of feedback from these guys. And a good PD takes that information and again cascade it up to people as well.
Some technical issues. Just this last panel. I don't know. My internet.
Your internet's had enough. Your internet said, "Look, we're over this."
You need us to freestyle this.
I do not need to laugh.
Oh, Jesus.
Chichi, you have been doing an amazing job. So your
Lord.
internet, I saw someone just posted on Facebook, they said Nigerian bandwidth, and then they had a frowny face. But they hanging in there, so they understand. They know what we're dealing with. So hey, let's just keep it going. But yeah, they've been posting on Facebook like with the frowny face, Nigerian bandwidth.
It's just embarrassing. So Johnny, if I disappear, you got to just jump in for me because I don't know what's going on this last session. I just keep freezing.
We got your back, baby girl. Don't worry about it. Keep it going. You got the
It would be the radio session. Really? Come on.
You got 3 people up there. That's all they do is talk. So they can just go back and forth.
I was about to say, if we're going to this audience research conversation or not, but okay.
So we see you, Chi-Chi, but you look like you gotten in a frozen stance there.
Well, can I ask Deji? Deji, you mentioned audience research. How much do you rely on research for your radio stations?
A lot actually. I mean, actually, depending on what we're doing. So in terms of music, we kind of do a music research kind of like once every month. But in terms of like a big piece of work, I mean, I like to commission research every quarter, just to kind of reinforce whether we're on the right path and to kind of allow us to get data and insights that they could turn into actionable insights for the station. So to me, my background is really marketing as well and strategy. So research is a big grounding for me. I always kind of go to the research and get and pull out, like I said, actionable insights and data from that. We tend to do a really big piece of research every year, but we do kind of small dipstick research things like weekly, monthly, just to kind of see we're on the right path, and sometimes you'll be surprised to find out that you might realize you suddenly find out that I mean, even down to we do research even down to the places that we want to do our events at. Is that where everyone's going to right now? Because it was I don't know how it is in the States, but in Nigeria, the turnaround period for places is very quick. So people kind of love a place, go there, rinse it out, and then the next month they're looking for the next hot thing, the next hottest thing in town. So for me, it's a really big part. It's really important.
Do you use anything in addition to that as far as your music selection?
In terms of tools?
Yes.
No. No. Other than the research, we don't really, I mean, I guess we've got a music committee. I don't know. I'm sure you probably have a playlist team that kind of goes through all the songs that we get inundated every week with songs, and I think that Gina had mentioned about about artists not being students of history anymore. Was it you that mentioned that where it's like we're not that our music philosophy isn't even in that genre. So why are you sending it to us? It's never going to get on unless we're doing a specialist type program or whatever. But
Yeah.
but yeah. So the playlist. So as well as the research, we've got the playlist team, which kind of looks at songs. They're very familiar with what the station wants, and the PDs obviously drive that as well. So, but the music research is the big thing for us.
Which is why
How about yourself?
media, but that's why social media is so important, because
Yes.
a lot of times, especially from our side, if the research is not there to really warrant the song getting the airplay, then at least we can keep working towards proving it to ourselves, or bringing those metrics to the radio station saying, hey, let's rethink this research, because here's what we have is research that says this many people are feeling the song, or even other places outside of social media. I mean, when we could, pre-COVID days, that sounds like 100 years ago, right? Pre-COVID, when we could really go somewhere and test out a song and see the audience reaction and get the video and say, hey, but look, this happened in all these cities because we went to these places to try it out. Like, that becomes research for us too, and I can tell you that I would encourage that artists. I mean, that's why we need all these spaces. That's why you need as much as you can to bring more metrics to the table that really tell your story, because really those metrics that you're talking about, that's one pathway, maybe sometimes 2 or 3 systems that you're using, which still could in moments not get an artist to have an opportunity that they feel they deserve, and the people who are around them feel that they deserve. So I do think that's a great example for why social media is so important. YouTube is important. Get those artists, get those views up, like put content, again, along with having great music, got to have great content too, right? So get the content up that says, I'm someone that should be looked at because people are paying attention to what I'm doing. And that's really,
I agree. I think there are so many different platforms that we really need to look at, not just the music research arm of it. In addition to your gut, just knowing your music and your audience and your
gut
city,
too.
Your
But how
marketing.
many artists do you hear? Do y'all hear? They're like, oh, I'm not really into it like that. Some are still way more reluctant than they need to be. Like, this is like water right now. Like, anybody's like not willing to be social and on social media. I'm like, or streaming or any of these other things. I'm like,
but even for an example, Gina, on BET Awards, there's a new artist I think Epic Records has, and he performed, and I was watching social media just like, who is this? Why? And I'm like, so those kinds of moments too. I think the radio programmers need to also be tuned in, because you can miss the next great artist for your format.
That is very true.
Okay, Chi-Chi, I took over for you. Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Chi-Chi, I want to jump in. I want you to know you got fans out there, girl, on Facebook. They like, we got your back. Don't worry. Yeah, you got fans. They're like, hey. It happens. So they're not having a problem at all, honey.
I just have to get off for a bit, let the internet rest, and then come back. So I'm not sure what I've missed, and I don't want to ask something you guys have already discussed.
But
We were just talking
you know,
about the different platforms that we use in choosing
okay.
music.
Okay, so yeah, so I think this kind of came up in our last session. I don't know if you heard it, Kashan, but for the and you kind of hinted at it, right, in terms of having relationships as a
Hmm.
necessary conduit to get you on a radio station. If you had to describe for your platform, and then Deji, you can do for your platform as well, to the artist that is just like, you know what, I want to be at a space where I'm on heavy rotation and I'm going back to back to back. But what is the process? You know, what does that look like? Because, like you said, Deji, if you're in a time that everything happens so fast, or people think everything happens so fast, it's also because they're not educated on, well, this is the actual process to get to heavy rotation. So let's say I'm interested in getting on your platform in DC as an artist. How does that look like
Well,
as
I mean,
somebody that doesn't have the
and Gina
network?
said it in the very beginning. It starts with a great product. You know, that's first and foremost, because again, at the end of the day, I owe my listeners a great product as far as the radio station sound.
Do you listen to everything that comes on your desk?
I do, and
Wow.
yeah. um, I mean, and my program director for my hip hop station. You know, he has a weekly music meeting that I'll pop into. I may not go every week, but every other week I may pop into, or I may text him and our programming assistant, and what's really hot, because the record company executives are coming to me, for those conversations. But it is also the relationships, especially when you look at the station that I actually program, the Urban AC station, and a lot of those artists I do have relationships with. So it's do you have a great product? And if apples to apples, if it's three great songs, and I just happen to have a really good relationship with a particular artist that every time that there's something that Urban One wants to do, that we call, they come.
Hmm.
Obviously, that that gives them a little bit of an advantage, and not to say that the other artist that is considered in that particular vein is not going to get played, but it does give them an edge. And Gina knows, with her artist Q Parker, he's a friend to the DC cluster. Everything that we've asked Q Parker to do, he comes across for. So I think it's artists understanding that it's a two-way street. It's a business for both sides.
Hmm.
So I think it's the product, it's the relationship. If it's a new artist, then obviously that's a completely different scenario. And again, to go back to the last panel, making sure you have the right management that can come in and speak, and articulate what the goal of the project is. Not just, I want to hear my record on the radio, and what's the next step for this particular artist. How, are we investing our radio airwaves in this artist for the long term, and why are we? So, and again, I think sometimes artists don't understand that radio is a business. It's a multi-million-dollar business
Mm.
that we are responsible for.
Mm.
Let me
Thank you,
interject
Kashaw.
this about relationships though, because one of the things that I try to do is to encourage everyone to have as solid of relationships as they can have, specifically the artists, because a lot of times, and we have a lot of artists who are open to the idea and open to the construct of, you should, as you're being introduced, so starting with the new artists, as you are being introduced to programmers and the markets and to other businesses that also get an opportunity to play into how we promote their music, build some of these relationships that you can foster and cultivate, and and really nurture yourself outside of what we all do. Because if nothing else that I can tell you that's going to happen, chances are, if you're starting somewhere, you may not be there the whole career.
Hmm.
Also, that means the team around you may change. So you may be somewhere, but the teams change. And also your own personal team change. Managers, I can't tell you the number of managers some of the artists go through. And if they are the only ones with invested in the relationship, you really are left at a disadvantage, when that's the advantage that Kashawn is talking about, is because of a one-on-one relationship that has been developed between her and an artist. And I think that counts for so much. But I just believe, A lot of people don't have a stake in great relationships anymore and communicating well. And I think all of those are things that we have to be responsible for helping to teach that, especially for artists who don't have it on their own. I think it's something that has to be shaped in them in order to be great artists. It's just not enough to be a good talent to sing well. Like there's so many other parts that come along with what does it take to be the kind of artist that gets to have airplay or any other kind of attention that we would want. So
especially when the landscape is so competitive.
oh yeah, something has to be setting you apart beyond
Right.
the music. It
Right.
can't be because you got a stack of great
Right.
music.
I
on
mean,
your
we say that
desk.
to our program directors and our air talent all the time. It's like, okay, we can be in a market where there are 2, 3 radio stations playing the same song. What is setting us apart? What
Yeah.
are we saying between the songs? So that's the same thing with artists.
Mhm. I mean, let me just add to that as well. I mean, obviously, listen, the product is important. It has to be a good song. Otherwise, and I think people forget that sometimes. I look at radio sometimes as quality control. Like you said, I've got a duty to give a great listener experience to my audience, and so I'm not going to put a song that is absolutely crap on there just because even if I've got a great relationship,
Right.
because to me, I'm doing you a disservice if I'm not telling you the truth as to listen, this song isn't that great. You need to kind of work out your craft a little bit more, and then you can come on the radio. But to add to that as well, I think that the audience also has an important part to play in it because you have your request programs and you're asking the audience to make requests for songs, and then suddenly you're seeing a whole bunch of requests about this artist that you might not have heard about before, or you might just be playing them. They might not be on heavy rotation, but the strength of the requests from people are like, this is telling us something. Maybe this guy actually is someone that the audience are feeling, and so maybe he needs to be bumped up a little bit more to a higher rotation. So that also I think is also important as well. But the relationships are very, very key. You spoke
So
about
you would say people just dropping off your CD and going away is probably not it.
Yeah, yeah, it's not it. You might be lucky where the song just kind of, some songs are so big that it just kind of drive themselves, but that's like one, that doesn't come around very often. You need
It
to
ain't many of them, is it?
exactly. There are not many of them. You need to work the song. You need to build the relationships with the presenters, the PDs. You need to be available to the radio station. It has to be a mutually beneficial relationship as well. If we're doing an event, we call you to come over, you come over. Of course, it's an easier conversation when you got a new single coming out to come and say, "Oh, Dave, I've got a new single." Or your management, like Kashan said, sometimes you get artists who are changing managers every 2 weeks, and like it's just difficult to kind of build a rapport with this kind of artist because it's like, what's the plan here? It's difficult. So for me, good products, the audience has a part to play. Relationships very key as well.
So someone on Facebook asked a question, and I want to try to frame their question properly because what they're saying is how many song spots are allowed for airplay on the African side and on the U.S. side. So I'm guessing, Kashan, you had mentioned that, there is a limited inventory. So from a programming standpoint, right, you have 24 hours a day, what kind of things limit you? So, do you have like 50 songs in rotation and then that's it?
How about we just do hour clocks instead as opposed to doing the whole day? I'd imagine Kashan wants to kind of go into clocks, hourly clocks. I don't know. I'll let Kashan speak first.
I mean, yeah, when we're talking about hourly, there are really only 2 new songs an hour that we're looking at. So
Wow.
overall, when we discuss new music, there's about 6, 7 new songs that we may be talking about, which, if we're talking this week in this week's music meeting, 4 of them are still new songs. They're still not very familiar. So it may not be, but 2 or 3 slots. So that's why I say that the landscape is so competitive. And that's where I think that's where the digital space comes into play. Obviously back in the early 90s when I worked in Houston, it was like, okay, is your song getting a buzz in the clubs or in the community or whatever? But now it's really social media. If you are a brand spanking new artist and you want to come in and compete on the landscape with, the established artists that, if there's a new Drake record that drops, if there's a new Future record that drops, obviously they've proven themselves. They have a proven track record. So we're going to, make some space for them. But if you're a brand spanking new artist, what is it about what you're releasing that is going to catch my attention? So I think that artists have to take that into consideration as well. But yeah, there's really not a lot of open spaces on any given week. And I think that's the misconception. I think that's the misconception.
I think Gina had mentioned that there really is a science to radio that people kind of forget. Radio looks very glamorous on the outside, but it's a lot of hard work that people kind of forget about. If we're going to be very technical, you said you have. I mean, for us, we've got 9 brand news every week that we introduce. And then the previous brand news kind of go into A or B or C categories, and then the B's go into C's, and then then you have your super recurrent, which are songs that are really great that people kind of want to hear. So it's quite technical. In an hour clock, I don't think you could really play. I mean, by the time you consider adverts, the presenter links.
But Deji, if I can ask a question, do your brand news, do you move them out every single week?
No, sometimes they stay there. Because
right.
it's not been we don't feel like it's exhausted, it's done its time, and so it stays on there. Sometimes we move them to an A category, which still gets a fair amount of airplay in a day.
Can you break it down for us that are watching, not in Radio Land? So if I'm a brand new, that means what? And when I get moved, because I'm guessing my goal is to be an A. What needs to happen to get me?
A is your goal.
Yes, A is your goal.
So how are you defining a brand new, and how are you defining an A?
So so brand news would come in like we spoke about relationships. You got relationships with record labels, you got relationship with artists, you got relationship. You just got some big A. Drake has a new song. It's going to go in the brand news.
Okay.
You got a relationship with Chocolate City. They have a new artist they're trying to push out, or the established artist trying to push out. If it's a good song, the music community likes it. It goes in the brand news. Brand news typically play once every 2 hours, right? In our part of the world, anyways. And then
Kashawn, is that the same for you? Very quickly, Kashawn, is that the same for you?
About the same, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So. We get 9 brand news every week. Come to the second week, and you're deciding what categories the songs are going to go into. The songs that and someone mentioned social media. Social media is also very important because you go out there, you see, wow, this song is getting a lot of views. Let's put it to an A category. A song that's really not taking off kind of goes to a B or a C. And a song that we think is don't forget that some songs are in C and they've been in C category for, let's say, 4 weeks. And you think it's still a really good song. They can go into a super recurrent or recurrent song because it's the song that essentially encapsulates the philosophy of the station. And when people hear that, I know I'm listening to the.
So if I could jump in, I think as you said, Chi-Chi, A is where you want to be. A is the song that's going to get your maximum exposure.
So what's that frequency? Is that like every half hour, every hour?
It's about for us here in the States, it could be anywhere from an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the urban mainstream side, yeah.
Around that as well for us as well.
Yeah. So that's where artists, that's their goal, is to get the maximum exposure. Those are the songs that the average listener is saying, oh, we'll hear the same song over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the brand news are also good because from a imaging point of view, like for us, if it's a new song, you'll get the stinger that says, "Oh, brand new on the beat," for example, and then they'll play the song, and it'll be there. You'll enjoy that week, but you really want to be in the A category because that is like you said, it's about an hour 30 minutes. You'll hear the song. That's where you want to be.
So Kashawn, and Deji, I'll ask you the opposite of this, but Kashawn, are you playing any Afrobeats?
Yes. Our station here in DC, the hip hop station, WKYS, they play a lot of Afrobeats. I mean, and I think we had a couple of the artists at a couple of our events last year. I mean, very successful here in DC. Because I mean, DC is, as you know, is very
Yeah.
diverse.
Yes.
Hashan,
Yes.
tell me which artist, please. I'm curious to know which artist was the
I
one
know
that
it was
you got.
Davido, and
Okay,
I can't think of the other one off the top of my head, but there were a couple of artists that did
yeah.
very well here.
Davido's flying
Is
the
Burna
flag for
Boy
the
playing?
Afrobeats. What did you say,
Which
Cheech?
No, I was asking Kashawn if they're playing Burna Boy, Wizkid. Not yet. I just don't know.
Burna Boy, there was a
But
little bit of airplay on Burna Boy. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And Deji, on the flip side, like what informs the kind of international music you play in Nigeria?
um, Chichi, you know that we're very heavily influenced by kind of American pop culture and the UK sound, particularly for our station. So the big A-listers who everybody knows, be it Drake, the guys that everybody's aware of, they'll get on there. But we also subscribe to Radio Express, which kind of gets Radio Express R&B, Radio Express hip hop. We get songs from Radio Express every week, and like I said, the playlist committee or the music team kind of goes through the songs and decides the songs that go on. But obviously, we also have to consider regulation in Nigeria, where by law, the Broadcasting Commission requires us by law to kind of play 50% of our music has to be local content. So it has to be Nigerian Afrobeats music. And so obviously we have to play that. But, the big A-listers, the guys who everybody's aware of, the Beyoncés, we hear about it. Social media is great for that. It allows us to kind of know what's going on over there and what people are feeling over there. And we kind of bring. I mean, you were with us when we brought Migos to do a show in Lagos about 3 years ago, and I have to be honest, I'm like, I'm not sure about these guys, but the response was amazing. The video went all over the world. It was viral. You had people saying, "Oh my God, Migos is they're well known in Africa, in Nigeria," and it speaks to ensuring that you have the right people in your organization. Because we also kind of do focus group sessions. We sit down and say, like, listen, we're doing a show in December. Who do you think we need to bring in, considering our target market? And you get the 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, fighting hard for some names that I'm like, who's that? ASAP Rocky or ASAP Fergie? I'm like, ooh, who are these guys? Yeah, but you kind of have to go where your audience is, sometimes, because they're the ones that are kind of driving it. They're the ones that the brands want to advertise to, and so you need to kind of have your ratings up. But yeah, so
Megan
so
Stallion
that's
was here last year. I was actually shocked that
yeah,
enough
make
people
the
knew
style.
him.
And you know what? It was there was a big you wouldn't know about this, and I'm sure they won't like me talking about this, but there was a big bidding contest between a bunch of people that wanted to get her to perform at their event. So Meg Thee Stallion was just chilling, kind of playing us against each other, saying, "Yeah, right. Who can afford the most?" That's good.
So, Gina, I know you recall from our conversation yesterday, we had some a pretty heated discussion around radio stations paying artists. We know you're not, yeah. We know you're not an offender, Beat FM, but I think it'd be interesting to kind of discuss that. Kashawn, you mentioned that radio is a business; it's a multi-million-dollar business. On this side of the world, a lot of artists aren't really getting compensated properly. Right? It came up that, they can't be compensated because in some instances they're actually also playing for their songs to actually be on the radio. So how do you work through that? Are they, DJ, I'll go to Kashawn and then I'll come to you.
I think there needs to be some clarity given on the paper,
Okay.
because that's a real tricky subject matter for us in the U.S. So I think not saying paying, but we're talking about royalties.
Okay. Royalties, yeah.
Look, Kashawn's, I saw that eye go higher and higher and higher. Kashawn's like, I don't know what y'all talked about yesterday, but this is not a conversation I'm jumping into. So if we're talking about the royalty rates that
Yes,
need to be
the
paid,
royalties.
so then that's one thing. Or if you're talking about, I think that that's where I think
Right.
that's where you need
And I
to
and I don't and I can jump out here and say I don't know that I am the right person to really speak on the
Okay.
royalty rates. I
Yeah.
mean, if there
Okay.
was somebody from our legal team, they could probably
Okay.
speak a little bit more
More on
articulately.
royalties.
Yeah,
Deji,
yeah.
do you want to speak to that for this market about radio and royalties for artists?
If I want to talk about this, I have to kind of let me give a little bit of history. So back in the back in the 70s, when we had the international labels in Nigeria, the Sonys, where they had a setup in Nigeria. Um, there were actual legit collection societies set up to collect money for the artist. Um, I'm not. I wasn't obviously. I don't know how they agreed the royalty splits then. But fast forward to about 10 years ago, I've always been a big advocate of of us paying royalties to the artists because intellectual property is important. They need to eat off it. They need to feed off it. It's important. Um, it was a big kind of sit down with a bunch of privately owned radio stations and record labels and a collection society that had been assigned by the government to start collecting money on behalf of the artist. Um, Listen, the way we came to an agreement eventually on what the royalties would be, which I think was beneficial to everybody and it was agreeable to everyone. But you have to understand that in our part of the world, you know, the cost of running a radio station is huge. You know, you have to pay for power, which is a granted or a given in the States or in the UK. Like we've got, I mean, Chichi, you've been to my office. We've got the generator on 24 hours a day. So diesel alone, the cost of powering the stations is a huge cost. And so I think when we put our case forward to the reps, to kind of understand that, you might think that we're swimming in loads of cash. Well, we really aren't swimming in loads of cash. We I'm a big believer in being able to put forward a figure that you could be consistent with, as opposed to saying, oh, I'll pay you this, and then you pay for the first couple of years, and then you kind of fall back or renege on because you've realized that the cost is eating into the cost of doing your business or keeping the lights on in your business or paying your salaries. So we do pay royalties. Now there's some legal battles as well because the artists in Nigeria as well, not all of them are signed up to the collection societies. The artists, there's a lack of trust in them. We're working through it, and we're kind of encouraging all parties to kind of sit down and talk about it. Because for me, like I said, I think that it's important that we pay royalties to the artist. It's I can't imagine that we don't.
Thank you. Gina.
Well, the only thing I'm gonna add, if you are an artist, make sure, just like Dave was saying, like make sure you are signed up with the PRO. You need to get they are collecting on your behalf. So you need to make sure that you're signed up with BMI, ASCAP, CSAC. And also, that's if you're a songwriter. If you are an artist, then you also need to sign up with Sound Exchange because they also are collecting on your behalf. And I think that people just have to be informed. There's a lot of information out here. There's a lot that's being advocated for. There's a lot of talks right now about what the laws are, and the laws are continuing to change. So I think that this goes back to just being as informed as you can be. I would say if you're watching right now and have no clue as to what I'm talking about, I would just take some time today to Google is your friend. It's so full of information, and that's free. Now that is free. You don't have to pay for it. So go to Google right now and just type in royalty, type in PRO,
mechanical rights, stuff like that.
You need to really dig into what that is, so you'll know what you're missing out on for not making sure that you have all the necessary paperwork in order and really just signed up wherever you need to be. So
I mean, Chichi, I've got artists who sometimes come to me and say, "Oh, can you please not pay the collection society? Can you pay me directly?" And I'm like, no. I
no,
have to,
it doesn't work.
I have to pay the collection society, and they'll distribute to you. I can't,
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I'm so sure I had 1,000 spins this month, and I've only got paid for 50. I'm like, listen, just talk to them. But yeah, but information is key. You need to read up,
Information is key.
and this is why, going back to what Kashan said, you need to have a good team around you. Guys who are, because I can understand sometimes artists are creatives, just want to be left alone to kind of make good music, and and they don't want to kind of bother themselves with the.
But Deja, don't we want them to be better business people too, to some degree? Like we want
exactly.
them to have, and I'm here for the creative. Like I'm here for. I want to have people I can trust to take care of everything. But I think history has proven us that that's not even the wisest move either. Like I think that there has to be some level. You may not need to know all the inner workings, because guess what? Much like Kashan just said, I don't know the inner workings of a lot of things, but I got brilliant people around me that do. But I at least
top level,
some working knowledge of certain things, so you can, so you are familiar when you're reading. I think that was one of the things that we talked about yesterday, Chi-Chi. It's not enough to just read what's happening, but like have a level of understanding and comprehension. And so even if someone else is handling,
especially if this is your livelihood and this is your future.
Yeah, it's your livelihood, it's your future, and your legacy. Like it's all kind of things. So I think that you have to.
It's like I said, it's called show business for a reason. People forget the business part and just want to do the show part. There's a business to it.
I mean, no artist has ever said it better than Jay-Z. It's a business man.
There you go.
Exactly.
So we're getting to the end of the session. It's been great. So we have Kashan in America, and then we have Deji in Africa. Do you guys see any potential synergies? One of the great things that has been happening, I think, in every session as we've kind of paired people up is to look at opportunities, especially now taking advantage of what's happening, that we're all one people, and the objective for NAFEM is to reach across, right? And say, Kashan, this is what's going on in Africa, right? How can we help with, whether it's knowledge gap, this is what's, and then, from a Deji perspective, okay, this is what's going on in America. Is there any room for collaboration? There's so many things happening, whether it's regards music or business opportunities. Is there anything, Kashan, that like we on the continent can do to add value to what you're doing, and vice versa?
Well, I definitely think so. I mean, even if it's anything, if it's nothing other than just dialogue, and for us, probably before this pandemic hit, we had not thought about, sitting in these virtual spaces and talking to, anyone outside of our small circle. So I think this is, opened our eyes a lot of what we can do. And so I think it's knowledge, and it's knowing other communities, other cultures, and how can we exchange information and exchange the knowledge that Deji may have on what's going on in Africa and what's here in the States. So I definitely think there are plethora of opportunities.
For me as well, same thing. I think the knowledge sharing is really important. Collaborations. I mean, Chichi, us. We do a music conference every year, and in fact, after this, I'd love to kind of talk to Gina and Kashan, where we bring people in to come in and from. I mean, we've had Brian Biggs from Rock Nation give a talk at our music conference. We had I can't remember her name now, a lady from iHeartMedia who's come. So the knowledge sharing is really important. Resources, I'm very big on not being a big fish in a small pond. You know what I mean? I think that the search for knowledge kind of gets you, and it helps you and encourages you to kind of be better. You don't want to be stagnant. You don't want to be like thinking, oh yeah, I'm Deji, I'm the big dog in the beach, in Lagos, Nigeria. I kind of lose focus of what's going on in the media spaces around the world. I mean, I go to NAB conferences every year just to kind of see, even the new equipment. I go to some studios and I'm thinking, wow, the workflows have changed from what it is, and you just kind of want to be on top of these things because that's the only way to kind of grow. I mean, if we grow the tide, everybody grows, everybody rises. You know what I mean? So for me, the knowledge sharing is important, collaborations. I mean, I'd love to do some sort of, events, Africa type events in the States where with support from from maybe yourselves, and we're kind of exploring that. What's to say that Kashan says, listen, we need to have an Afrobeats radio in Atlanta. Deji, what do you think about that? Listen, the possibilities are endless, and like you said, we just need to kind of carry on the conversation and the dialogue and keep talking.
Deji, I need you guys to carry the Russ Parr morning show, maybe like in the early morning. I don't know. Y'all need to talk about that.
Yes.
Get that here.
Yes, I agree with Kiki. We need you to carry the Russ Parr morning show.
I say that.
No problem. No problem. Does it come with a sponsor? I mean, put my business hat on now.
We'll talk offline.
No, Deji, this is the funniest show ever. I'm telling you. It's great.
Is it 1 hour? Is it 1 hour, 30 minutes? I think.
No. It's like 4 hours.
It's 4 hours. But again, we can talk offline. We can.
All right.
We can
do a 2-hour package.
Right.
Your show could be the last 2 hours.
But yeah, I think also it's also good, to for the collaborations because it kind of exposes different cultures and nuances to different parts of the world, as well. So I'm big on that. Michichi knows I'm always in these meetings and trying to kind of collaborate with people from different parts of the world, and particularly in the media space as well. So yeah, so please, we'll definitely.
Yes. Well, guys, thank you so much, Johnny. You can kind of come back on. We have like 15 minutes. I at the end of the panel, I like to let the panelists kind of give their final words. This was kind of just a broad media conversation, and understanding that, for this bridge that we've been talking about, for that to be built, right, for that connection to be made, the media has a big role to play in it, and so I think that Deji, we've had conversations about, things that are going on in America, and, people here are talking about it, but there's a massive lack of understanding, So we consume the music, but people don't understand, so there are things that, let's say, a talk format allows you to understand about the African-American perspective and the African perspective. And once again, it's just communication, right? And then at the end of the day, we actually feel it. You know what? We're not that different, to be honest, right? So we hope that we can have the media there to push the narrative, and to show that it is possible at this stage. So just your last words, just 2 minutes to just kind of wrap up, your position.
Well, I'll jump in and go first. Leave the radio experts to close it out.
Okay.
What we did not touch on, and I don't know how that did not come up, but like I know, every artist that's sitting out here, they'll say it's not their goal, but they want to be number one, and they want to be number one in radio. And I would like to say, I think if I could just leave the artists for sure who are watching with the fact that the quick hits come few and far in between. Like that's not the consensus or the majority. I think what the majority is, the artists that you admire or who have inspired you, it's taken them years to get to where they are. It's taken a lot of hard work. It's taken a lot of sacrifice. It's taken a lot of commitment. So I would just say, in most instances, and we've had a lot of examples where, people are looking at artists right now in 2019, 2018, who are at the top of the charts, but they've been doing what they've been doing for 20 years. They've been on a path and a journey to get to the top of the charts for the last 15 years or 10 years, but it's been longer than just that year cycle that you've given yourself to get it done. Yeah. So I would say, continue to just give your best self everywhere that you go with everything you have, and give time.
That's powerful.
And I think I would jump in and say, we spent a lot of today on the artist, but as far as media is concerned, the overarching theme was building a sustainable media and entertainment industry, it's also the personalities. I think that, there's an opportunities for us to really delve more into that. And how do we further our African and African American female, talent and executives, in this business, because there's a lack. That's something that I think we need to really focus on. Obviously, artists and artist performance is important, but that's also important too. As far as how do we further those careers of those young African American, young African females who say, okay, I want to be the next whoever. And how do I don't know how I get there. So I would love to see us have that conversation in the very near future.
I
think that's important.
To kind of reiterate what Kashan has said, for me, knowledge is power, and I tell all the artists I come across and managers that, you have to be students of history. You have to be curious about and very intentional about the career that you want to have. You can't just kind of leave things and think that they're gonna sort themselves out. You need to be intentional. You need to be curious. You need to be a student of history. Read about what's happened before. Everyone's got a story. Sometimes you see an artist and you think, oh my God, he's just come up, but he's been grinding for the past 10 years. You just didn't know about it. And then I also want to kind of finish up to say as well that most people should kind of, you started off by saying how was digital probably cannibalized on radio. Like I said to you, I think it's important to say it really is a positive contribution to radio. Particularly even in this whole Corona times, you can't do interviews because the stars can't come onto the radio, but people are doing IG live interviews on the radio station. They're doing Zoom meetings. We're having this kind of conversation with people in media in the States and in the UK. So digital is a positive contribution to radio. It kind of goes hand in hand. It's complementary. It's not I want people to kind of stop thinking that it's here to take over. It's not taking over. It's kind of, it should go hand in hand. And I always say to people, it's a complementary. It complements what's going on. If the honor guys are talking about, about a fun topic, you're driving traffic and saying, go to our website or go to our app or go to our Instagram. I've got a funny picture of something there. Check it out. They go hand in hand. It's not one or the other. As far and that's what I like to leave people with.
Thank you. I think that's important, and just going back to also what Kashan was saying about creating opportunities for females, right? Understanding the business. I think that's incredibly important. One thing I wanted to highlight on just about everyone's bios was the fact that they all started off as interns. And I know on this part of the world, it's not a thing, right? I interned for like 4 years for free before I actually got my first paycheck. And I find now that people don't appreciate that process, and feel they should be like an MD or CEO right away. And if they can't, then they want to be an entrepreneur and start their own business and be their own boss.
And you can't. You can't be an entrepreneur if you haven't gone through, you haven't made mistakes with, it's shocking to me. I'm like, you want to just become an MD or an entrepreneur without actually learning by being an intern somewhere and actually making mistakes there. It's easier to make mistakes with somebody else's money than with your money, because if I'm an entrepreneur and I make a mistake, that's it. Done. But if I make a mistake with someone else's money, at least, it's kind of slightly, it's easier.
Yeah. So Kashan and Johnny, even with regards to what we talked about the last panel with Azim and a lot of the training portion of whether it's the music industry or the media industry, and that, Deji, you mentioned this as well, the knowledge transfer. I think that could be a whole session with an entire specific audience. I know that I kind of shifted it around the artist right now because we've been talking so much about, the artists. Yes. But, I think that the behind the scenes is critical,
Yeah.
because there's an
Structure.
entire business that's there. And, I think Azim said, there's from the people that enter, right, there's like 10% that can actually make it, right, in front of the camera. Right. So all these other people that need to even just understand, like, okay, you can be a GM, you can be a scheduler, there's so many things you can do,
Right.
but it's that knowledge of even knowing that it's available. So Johnny, I mean, that can be something that we look at moving forward to really discuss more, especially how we empower women to take on a lot of these roles to start moving things forward.
Well, Chi, from the business structure to the artist representation to the radio, or should I say media exchange that you're wrapping up now, we have covered a lot of territory. We had experts that came on board that tried to crunch in an hour 30 years. 30 years of being in the business, as I think Kashan said, this is year 28, so you're trying to take 28 years and put it in a 1-hour seminar, which is virtually impossible. But based on the feeds that I'm seeing because when I turn my camera off, it's because I turn my back and I'm on my desktop reading the comments that viewers are making. And you have made an incredible impact. And each one of the guests that appeared yesterday and today, again, incredible impact. And I have to say, shout out, thank you, Gina, who had a schedule and allowed me to jump in the middle of the schedule and say, if you could just stay on for 5 minutes. But,
See, that's relationship, right? There we go.
That's what the relationships is all about. Kashan sent me a message. She said, hey, when Miss Johnny calls, we show up. So
when Miss Johnny calls, we show up. That's a 28-year relationship. Because she was somebody that I looked up to. She was, when I first started, she was running things over at Def Jam with all those hard-head guys, Kevin Lyles and Michael Kaiser and all them. And I'm like, okay, well, it's a woman over there too. So what's happening?
So I think the biggest thing that I have gotten from these 2 days is watching the collaborative exchange. Lester Pace and Mr. Sam, everybody like, okay, we got to grab Mr. Easy. Everybody is wanting to connect. And I don't believe that was there before. And I think we see the power of our coming together because, like you said a moment ago, at the end of the day, we're all the same. We're all the same. Yeah. Your dialect may be slightly different, or there may be a little slight accent that you have that I don't have. But at the end of the day, we're the same. So building the bridge that Lester kept talking about and that you mentioned just a moment ago, that is what is going to make this so crucial and so important. Mr. Deja, I'd love to do Women Who Jam in Nigeria. We have so many ladies.
Oh, Johnny, I think I was the first recipient of that award.
There you see. There it is. In Toronto, right? Was it in Toronto? In Toronto.
Yeah.
So there are a lot more conversations. Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's make it happen, Chi. Let's do it.
Yeah, we make it happen. And you heard it here first. The Raspar Show is coming to Africa.
Even if we can get 2 hours, 1 hour, get the 1 hour package or the 2 hour package.
We could do an exchange. What program would you like to hear in the States, Chi?
We'll talk about it. We'll make this thing work.
To all of our speakers, Gina, Kashan, Deja, to Lester, Azim, Mr. Easy, everybody that took the time out to join us. Let me add, this was a slight experience because we didn't know exactly how it was going to work, but powerful. I'm just looking at the numbers. Like I said, I only looked at my page, and then FM Africa page. And when I see over 3,000, like 3,500 engagements in one day, that says people are interested. That says people want to know what we're talking about. That says the need for the connectivity is there. And we want to be that bridge. We want NABFEM to be that bridge. We're building that bridge. We have NABFEM Africa. We're NABFEM here. We're NABFEM. Gina is our director in Nashville. So there's NABFEM. It's so many ways to provide this connectivity, and we're going to have those conversations. And so, Deja, you can just look for us. We coming to the beat now. You know, I already been on. Let me just say that. I already been on, but I'm ready to come back, and just so many things that we want to do. So we appreciate you. Thank you, Gina. I can't say it enough, man. I know I imploded your schedule.
Get off of here. Get off of here.
Thank you, Kashawn. Thank you, Deja. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Listen, I'd be on all day telling you thank you. So
yeah, I just want to say thank you to the team on this end that pulled all the some of the talent.
Please.
First of all, our media partners, Deji with the Beat FM and Sam with Trace, that's committed to sponsor and push all our initiatives. I want to thank Aldo McCurry for pushing to get this done as well and pulling all the stakeholders locally to be a part of this. I want to thank Adora, who's been incredible in terms of making sure that we execute everything seamlessly. And Oshahan, thank you so much. And once again, to all the panelists that have taken their time to be a part of this, our first one. Hopefully post-COVID, this happens in person and everyone gets to meet each other, because the energy virtually has been incredible. I can only imagine what the energy is when people are actually face to face. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Could you preferably do it in a nice island somewhere in the Caribbean so we can all kind of...
And listen, let me add, you haven't lived until you get Chi-Chi's Texas at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Now that 6-7 hour time difference is no joke, man. And she is Texas. 4 o'clock in the morning. But it's been amazing, absolutely amazing.
Thank you, everyone. Chi-Chi, do the emails so I can, for Kashan and Gina, yeah?
Yes, I will.
Yeah, we're gonna do that. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate you. And
Bye.
we are coming back real soon. Really, really, really soon.